So tonight on Bridges Beyond Bars, we have Marcus Ingram on the phone. I think it's important to give you an opportunity to tell people your perspective and your version of events. So I guess if we can start from the beginning, if you can talk to me about what life was like before the crime that had you sentenced to the time that you're doing now.
I was raised by good parents. I had a great mother and father, and I still have a great mother and father. Although my mother is not in the best of health medically, she's still going strong. Haven't seen her in almost 10 years now. She was always my backbone, and she is still good morals and principles in me as far as coming up the right way. And my stepfather raised me because my biological father wouldn't have nothing to do with me. After he found out my mom was pregnant, he pretty much left her high and dry. I was raised by my stepfather and, of course, my aunties and my granny. My granny had a lot to do with my upbringing, too. So I can say that I was raised with a good family until my latter days of my juvenile years when I started running the streets with my buddies.
Did you have questions about your dad that kind of caused maybe like anger
Well,
or resentment towards him?
I knew my biological dad, and he used to try to come and get me for weekend visits. And
Um,
when he did, it was like he favored the family that he was with then. So it
mhm.
just I wasn't feeling him and I didn't want to stay with him, but he used to force me to come stay with him just because he had that,
Right.
he wouldn't force her to turn me over to him. And I did have anger towards him because of that. I didn't want to be there. Like,
Mhm.
I was fine where I was, and it was like snatching me out of my comfort zone and taking me
Yeah.
away for the weekend and the family that I knew. And I would always go kicking and screaming, crying, and I just didn't like it. That whole weekend, I would be miserable. And it even got to the point sometimes where my mom would have to come get me sometimes before the weekend visit was over. Like, he's never been my dad. In the 20 years of incarceration that I've been locked up, he's not said one word to me other than my mother should have raised me better. I took that as a smack in the face because my mom raised me
Mm.
just fine.
You don't really get a chance to condemn how someone raised me when you gave her no choice but to raise me on her own. Did you have brothers growing up, or did you go and seek that sort of male companionship and belonging on the streets?
I think that's the biggest part of it. I didn't
Mhm.
have any brothers at home. I only had my baby sister, and it was me and her. And when I went out, I only had like my male friends, and that's when I went out. And unfortunately, the group of guys that I chose to go out with when I was younger was not the best group I chose to go out with. Some of
Mhm.
them were negative and took me down a negative road. And
Yeah.
I ended up doing time in juvie, and I stayed in trouble not a lot, but just the shit the kids do, breaking windows and stripping cars. Violent kid, but the other kid,
The troublemaker.
just the neighborhood menace.
Did you feel like you had any sort of, or your parents had any sort of support from the system to help you make better choices?
Well, I can honestly say that juvenile system helped me because I only went once. And I ended up going to one of the more minimum security ones because, like I said, I never went for anything violent. It was always just little petty charges. Ended up sending me to a Natural Bridge Learning Center out in, I think it was Lexington somewhere. And that's where I ended up getting my certification as a auto mechanic. So I got my trade there that has
Mhm.
followed me through life to this day. And I made a good living off of being a mechanic. When I go home this time, that's what I plan on doing. It was something that I can say I actually needed to straighten me up.
That's positive. I think that's the key, right? Is like listening to the kids and going, okay, what can we do that's going to motivate them? How did you then find yourself in the position of the crime that led to your incarceration now? So, what did that look like?
I was sitting in my grandfather's one night. We were watching the World Series, and I walked to my mom's house, which was right across the street. And I hadn't been in my house but maybe 5 minutes tops. And before I could get undressed and get in bed, someone knocked on the door. And when I looked out my window, my house was surrounded with police. So when I go to the door, they tell me to step outside. And I step outside, and they immediately place me in handcuffs and take me to a car. And when I ask them what I'm being arrested for, they tell me that I'm being arrested for attempted robbery. And I tell my mom to come outside, and they tell her that a lady down the street had identified me as a person that had stopped by her house and told her that I needed water for my car. When she let me in to get water for her car, that I had knocked her little kid down and then tried to rob her. And when my mom and dad told them where I was, they was like, she identified me as the suspect. When we went to court, they said that they had used canines to track the suspect. No canines had been to our house or anywhere near our house. So
Right.
that was false. And it ended up being a railroad. Unfortunately, my parents was not able to hire a attorney. So I was
Huh.
stuck with a court appointed attorney, and I couldn't prove that I was not at that lady's house. I ended up getting 10 years for attempted robbery.
So, you got out of juvenile, everything was going well, and then sort of your first interaction with the law, you were pinned for something you didn't do.
That was the one time that I was innocent of a crime that I actually didn't do.
So, once you got out from
Yeah.
doing that 10 years, then what did life look like?
Once I got out from that, and I got out in '98, and 6 months of me getting out, I had a job. I started out unloading trucks for a freight company at Kroger Warehouse over in Salem, Virginia. And I was making like $18 an hour at that time. And that immediately went to me being supervisor of my own crew with my own warehouse within 90 days to 6 months later. And I was bringing home like $1,500 a week. And then I met my youngest daughter's mom. We had our daughter in 2000. We moved out of the apartment into a house. I had a 3 bedroom, full finished basement house with a fenced backyard. Everything was good for the first 4 years. In 2004, she was on her way to work and she got T-boned on her way to work. And that ultimately ended up with her having back problems and being put on pain medication. And they put her on roxycodone, and she was put on 90 pills a month for a period of 6 months. And then one day when I took her in for her checkup, they gave her 7 pills and they told her, we can no longer give you script for 90 pills. Wean yourself off of it. She took them 7 pills and she went home with them. And after them 7 pills was gone, she started taking her check and buying pills using bill money to do
Mhm.
that. And then that became a problem. He agreed to stop doing the pills, but then she went from pills to alcohol. And the alcohol is what drove me to doing cocaine because I had had enough of her and her shit. For instance, I came home one day and the kids was running around in the house. They didn't even know where their mommy was. And she
Right.
was downstairs under a swimming pool, blacked out drunk. She would call the police on me and try to have me arrested all the time for frivolous shit. They would come and find out she was lying and then they would leave. It just kept going on and on and on until finally they made her leave and left me with the kids at the house, the car, and I had everything.
Right.
I couldn't put all of that. So, it got to the point where I couldn't put all the bills in. That's when I turned to my robbery spree. Like, I had to do something to feed my baby. And that's when I got caught up with the crime spree that I've been on now. Like, I had a drug problem, but I also had to feed my kids. So I started robbing stores. I would snatch the money and run. It came a time when one of the clerks in the store pulled a gun on me. And that's when I resorted to the pepper spray in my robbery. I felt like pepper spray was the safest way for me to rob somebody and not hurt anybody or get hurt. But little did I know, pepper spray was the worst thing that I could have done because pepper spray actually carries more time than an actual fire because a firearm only carries 5 years. Pepper spray carries 40 years. Somebody
Wow.
needs to make that make sense to me because I will never understand that, but that's the law. So when I done the second robbery, I told my co-defendant I couldn't, I don't want to go on like this, and I begged her to take me to rehab. For one, because I knew that what I was doing wasn't right. She refused to take me to rehab because she felt like she would lose me because we had just got together. So she would rather continue driving me around robbing these stores as opposed to taking me to rehab. So I confessed um, and I didn't deny any of them. And I immediately broke down into tears when they took me in because I felt bad for what I'd done. I was suffering from a depression. They did a court ordered psychiatric evaluation on me, and it was determined that I suffered a major depressive disorder while doing these crimes. And that wasn't even paid attention to when they sentenced me. I just broke down and told him, like, listen, man, I did it. You know, I'm sorry. If I could take it back, lock me up, took me to jail. And I'm still sitting here 20 years later doing this time for robbery or pepper spray.
So, what was your total sentence that they gave to you when you were sentenced for the robbery?
Okay, they gave me 32 and a half years.
And did you get any
Mine was
suspended or did
32
you do the full
years.
32?
Mine was actually 50 years on one of the charges. So I got suspended time over my head.
So, talk to me about, I guess, like obviously you had already done 10 years in prison and then you're looking down the barrel of another 32. So, what has this sort of
Yeah.
sentence looks like for you?
The first 10 years of my incarceration, I completed anger management. I've done mentoring. I have completed thinking for a change. And I did a substance abuse course. And then I was sent to King Mountain. And unfortunately, I was put in a cell with a mental health patient there. And on March 3rd, 2023, it was the worst day of my life because I was almost killed. I was attacked with a lock and a sock. I was beat for 18 seconds. And the only reason that he stopped was because I collapsed in my own blood. He thought that I was dead. Those people didn't even tell my wife that I was taken to a hospital. And then when she did get in touch with them, they told her that the only reason that they would have told her is if I was dead. That's when, I really got the true feeling of what it feels like to be a victim.
First, I'm sorry that that happened to you. You understand the hurt of being on the other side from having gone through that experience and understanding the sort of trauma that now leaves with you every day. I'm sure that you're more vigilant than you were before, more aware of your surroundings, untrusting, all of those things. And then, not to mention, probably injuries that you still live with as a result of that. But it certainly gives you
Yeah.
a different perspective.
I suffer from PTSD from it. I still sometimes have bad dreams, but I'm getting there. It really made me feel bad for what I did to people.
Tell me about what growth you've had or your experience with incarceration this time versus if you look back and you were first incarcerated. What is Marcus like now as opposed to back then?
When I first came in the system, of course, I was angry at myself for one, because, I know I let a lot of people down.
Okay.
And I knew that, that person that left the street wasn't who I really was. So, of course, when I first came in the system, I had a I don't give a damn attitude. Didn't listen to rules and regulations. But I still maintained enough discipline to not go catching a lot of disciplinary charges. I kept my nose clean. I knew how far I could push the bar without getting charges. But I did test the limits with them. And then after I met my wife, I began to clean my act up. But that incident that took place, and I began to try to enroll in victim impact programs. And I wish I could because I would apologize again today for what I done because I lived it. And it's different because with them, they was able to get justice. But with me, I'm still fighting to get justice for what happened to me. I feel like that's part of my punishment for what I did to the people that I did. That's how I look at it, and that's how I continue to go through life and be able to deal with that situation. And because of that incident, I have to take meds twice a day for migraines.
Right.
I'm always left with a memory, that's for sure.
Right. I think, like you said, it has given you a new sort of understanding and appreciation of victimization. Like, even if you didn't have those physical injuries, like there's psychological toll, there's mental toll, there's emotional toll, obviously, it still very much upsets you when you talk about it, right? And I think when applying that to your situation, obviously, we know that you didn't go in with a gun, but there's obviously possibly psychological toll on your victims from that.
Right.
What kind of conversations are you having with maybe younger guys that you see that are going down sort of a negative path or trying to buck the system? Are you imparting your lived experience onto them?
Yeah, it's funny you ask. I don't know if my wife told you on my birthday,
Oh,
I got assaulted by the police here. And somehow they reversed the role, of course, and tried to say I assaulted the police. And they put me
right.
in RHU for 9 days. They put a young guy back there in the cell beside me. He was 20 years old, and he weighed about probably 100 pounds. And they shoved him in a cell and pepper sprayed him and beat the shit out of him for no reason. And the whole time they was doing it, he was screaming, "Stop! Like, what did I do? I'm not resisting. I'm handcuffed." So I told the kid once it was over with, like, what happened to you wasn't right. Coming into the system, I seen guys like him, and while I was on Buckingham, I mentored guys like him. So I felt like it was my duty to try to talk to the youngin, and because where he's going, like if he don't change his attitude, he might die up there. Because they're gonna
Yeah.
beat him bad up there. Further you go up in the mountains, the worse the assholes get, the bigger the police get. And
Yeah.
some people don't make it. Like it's sad, but some of us don't make it from the beatings they give us. I said that man that whipped you today, he outweighed you probably by 115 pounds, 120 pounds. I said, you getting ready to go to River North, King Mountain, or it was another level 4, Pocahontas. I
Mhm.
said, and I got news for you. Them white dudes up there are twice as the white dudes down here. And they're not going to stop. This officer stopped after like 5 minutes of whipping you. When they beat you up there, they beat you until they break something. So I told him all of this. And believe it or not, he sat there and listened to me, and I could tell that fear had hit him because by the time he left, he wasn't ready to go up there. He was
Yeah.
trying to stay, but it was too late. So I told him, I said, look, bro, you can make it anywhere. You just got to change your mindset, put your head down, go to
Mhm.
school, follow the policy, the rules. Stay out of the way, man, and you can make it. Like you'll be back on lowland before you know it. If you go up there with the mentality you had when you came back here, I hate to tell
Right.
you, but you're gonna die or you're gonna go up even further. You know, I give it to them cut and dry.
I don't think you necessarily have to be, employed by the DOC to be a mentor. If you can be that level-headed support for people that are coming in and perhaps they are looking down the barrel of a lot of time, those football numbers, and they're angry at the world and everything's unfair, especially when they come in at, 18, 19, 20, and, the brain's still developing at that age. They're still boys. I think it's important that you take that role.
Yeah, that's absolutely what it is. They seek the guys that have in the most time and the ones that they feel like they can confide in and trust the most.
Right.
That's who they usually flock to for guidance, you know what I mean? And most of them can tell that I've been in the streets,
Yep.
just by the way I carry myself, the knowledge I have of the streets.
People that come in and try and teach these cognitive classes and stuff, they've never walked a day in the life as somebody that's experienced poverty or drug use or not being able to find a job, right? But you've walked that path, and so you can find a place to relate with these people and meet them where they're at rather than just telling them what to do and what not to do, which I think is incredible, and a kudos to you. Um, so I guess
Uh,
going forward, obviously we know that you've got a pardon in with the pardons office, and we'll be promoting the change petition for you through that. Like obviously you probably wrote a statement to support your pardon packet, and I'm not going to ask you to read that word for word, but I guess for anyone that's watching that probably may not know you, why should the governor give you a pardon?
I wrote the governor and I basically told him, like, at 35 years old, I was a man that was troubled with an addiction. I was young, with a family, kids I had to support, and I was going through a real bad time in my life. And if he takes the time to look at the Marcus Ingram before those charges, then he will see that I wasn't the same Marcus Ingram that committed those charges. And I'm not that same Marcus Ingram now. Like, I've got a beautiful family out there that loves me, supports me. My kids are grown. I've lost 20 years with my kids. The growth in me from the time I got locked up to now. Like, it's there. It's written in the DOC record books. Minus all these charges that Green Rock seems to want to keep throwing at me for whatever reason. I just want to get home to my mom. She's old. She's medically unable to come see me. I don't want her to remember her son in prison. This is not where I want to spend my last days.
Yeah, I agree. So how can we support you? Aside from signing the petition, how would you like people watching to support you?
Anybody that reads my story and believes I should be home with my family, please sign that petition. You can write the governor letters of support if you feel like it. You can email Trudy Harris. She's the lady that's doing the pardon investigation, and you can show her your support for my release. I know that that helps too. But I'm open to anything anybody can do to help me push this part.
I think, as long as you stay focused on what you need to do, we're not expecting big influx of pardons at the end of Youngkin's term, but it's not unheard of. He has pardoned people. But at the same time, I think that, and based on everything we've talked about, I think that you're probably aware of timing. And I think that at some times you think to yourself, okay, do we want to push it under Youngkin and risk a denial? Or would we rather wait for somebody that is a little bit more liberal and less leaning, that is going to look at it with a fair and unbiased view, rather than push it under Youngkin and risk him not giving you the attention that you deserve, right? Like your story and what you've done and the things that, you've worked on since you've been in prison, because that's important. And that's nearly more important than just getting it seen. Like, we want to get it seen in a way that's fair to you.
Thank you, nurse, for everything
You're
you've done.
welcome.